Breaking inputs coming in on the broadcast. Chief of Defence Staff has issued a statement, a big statement in fact, by General Anil Chauhan on Jawaharlal Nehru recognizing Tibet as part of China. He says this was Nehru's move to build good ties with China, and also questions why Nehru signed the Panchsheel Agreement, why Nehru recognized Tibet as part of China. We'll try and connect with our reporters to get you more details. Let's listen in to that reaction, that big statement first.
Independence, of course, the British left and they had to leave one day, and it was for India actually to decide where our front is. So Nehru probably knew that we had something as a McMahon Line in the east, we had some kind of a claim in Ladakh area, but it was not here. So that's why he wanted to go in for a Panchsheel Agreement probably. And for the Chinese also, it was because when they had kind of liberated, so-called liberated Tibet, they had moved into Lhasa, they have moved into Xinjiang. This particular area was extreme from both the ends, so they wanted a stability probably in this particular region. So this area assumed some kind of a priority. So independent India was keen to build good relationship with China, and once it gained independence in 1940, China, once it was independent in 1949, it pursued neither its claims for enclaves and gave up the special privileges which had inherited from the British. I forgot to mention that British also, after the Young Husband expedition, because of this great game which was taking place, did inherit some privileges like keeping of armed escorts and trade agents, and in the middle sector they were at Ghatok. So once Tibet was occupied by China, so we gave up those privileges. We recognized China as for its permanent seat in United Nations, and this Himalayan buffer which was there between us and Tibet, that evaporated, and that would convert into a border. In 1954, India recognized Tibet as part of China. Both countries signed the Panchsheel Agreement. With this, India assumed that it has settled its border, the northern border, the only area which we assumed that was not settled, through a formal kind of a treaty. For India, the legitimacy of this border now rested on the Panchsheel Agreement, which it thought had been demolited by identifying 6 passes through which trade would take place or pilgrims will go. That are Shipvila, Mana, Niti, Kangri Bangri, and Dharma and Lipule. But the Chinese stand was that this agreement was negotiated only for trade, and it nowhere reflected the Chinese stand on the particular.
Let's go across to Rishabh. Rishabh, big statement coming in from CDS explaining the Panchsheel Pact, and he says Nehru did this to build good relations with China. India assumed that this would help us settle the issue once and forever on the northern border.
Well, definitely. See, there are a lot of versions, there are a lot of stories around the whole Panchsheel Agreement between the two, if we talk about. But having said that, what exactly was Panchsheel Agreement? Panchsheel Agreement was basically a goodwill agreement between India and China. And as CDS rightly pointed out, that India realized that if this happens, India and China will have good relationship, and the frontiers would also be demarcated. Given that the McMahon Line is not, clear, and there are versions of it on both the sides. So this could have helped India and China resolve the boundary issues and also ensure that how India and China borders would look like in future, and that's what CDS is pointing out, which definitely didn't go down well in last 70 years. As we know, in 1962, China invaded India. A lot of Indian territory went in China's control. Since then, there have been a lot of skirmishes on the border. Till now, there is no definitive border between India and China, a line of actual control, right, which is a deemed line or a frontier that is being, used as demarcation. But that, again, is not an international border, not acceptable to both the sides. So a lot of things happened. But
yes, but we also had to give up our privileges. That's the other thing that the CDS said. Srinjoy joins us with more on that. Yes.
See, the thing is, what has been left unsaid is the recognition of Chinese control over Tibet. If the Chinese took Tibet in 1959 or so, and India had not recognized it, if India had not recognized the fact that Tibet was a part of China, then a lot of these problems regarding the border would not have happened. But India in the 50s was not as strong as India is today. And India had to keep in mind a variety of things. Also, what is remembered is that Prime Minister Nehru was an idealist. He really believed that India-China relations could work. He really believed that here were two countries who were coming out of a post-colonialist era. India, of course, was under the British for many years. China was never really a colony, but in many ways it was controlled by European powers. I mean, Shanghai and all these places were trading outposts, and China had suffered tremendously because of the export of opium by the British to China. Now, as a result, Nehru actually felt that maybe India and China could work together and work together very well. But of course, India was let down. India was terribly let down. And we know what happened in '62, because at that point, India couldn't imagine that China would attack India, and the results were there. But '62 is a different case. 2026 is very different from 1962. That's really the basic point. And General Chauhan is making it very clear that this was a situation that happened in the 50s. But today is very different from 1962 or the situation in the 50s. Panchsheel was a way of saying that, look, the Chinese can be friends with us, but we were let down in 1962, and that is something India has begun to recover from.
All right, Rishabh and Srinjoy, thank you very much for getting us the details. We're slipping into a very short break with that. We have a lot more lined up on the other side.